A happy February, everybody. We're getting pretty close to Valentine's Day, so I thought, you know what? It might be fun to make a graphic for social media that could be used for a company or a brand to tell their followers or their community Happy Valentine's Day. So a little virtual e-card, I guess. Using Adobe Photoshop, 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels, 72 pixels per inch is fine, RGB color. And then I'm going to click Create. And here we are. We have our nice canvas here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to bring in a picture. I found this on unsplash.com, a great free place for free use of images. And I like this cardboard texture. I thought that would work good. I just searched for cardboard in the search menu there for Unsplash and found that. And I will paste it into this square, and I'll use Control T to transform and resize my object. Make sure to keep it scaled. And I think that looks pretty good to begin with. Now what I want to do is I want to add a new layer, or I might actually call this layer cardboard. All right, and then I can make a new layer above that one. And with this one, I can use Shift Backspace. Go up here to fill with a color. And the color I want to use is 640000. This nice deep red color. And then I'll click OK, covers the top. And I'll call this red. Doesn't really matter. And for the blend mode for this red layer, I can select something like, how about soft? I do kind of like this soft light on here. Shows the cardboard through there a little bit and get kind of a good mixture of it. You can play around with those layer styles and see which one you like the best, or adjust that opacity if needed. Once I have those two layers created, I'm going to select them both by control selecting and then choosing my group, create a group button down here. Puts them in a folder, and I'm going to call this card. So that's like my card group. All right, now I'm going to make another layer above that. This layer is going to be using some text. And the color of the text doesn't really matter at this point in time. I'm just choosing white so that it stands out nicely. And I'm going to click here. And I want to use the font or the typeface Mistral Regular. You can use a similar one if you want. It's kind of up to you on what you want to use for it. And I don't know, I'll just type in something like Happy Valentine's Day. And then if I use my move tool and Control T, I can resize this type here. I kind of like this retro-y throwback style typeface on here, and then I'll resize it to where it fits kind of nicely in this square. So it'd be like a good Instagram picture post here. Alright, so Happy Valentine's Day is on there. Looks good. And then I'll make another new layer. And I might actually slide this layer below that. Doesn't really matter, but just to keep things organized. And then going over to my shapes, I'm going to choose Custom Shape Tool. And there's this Legacy Shapes and More. All Legacy Default Shapes. Mouse is not really cooperating with me today. And if I scroll down, and there should be one, I can't remember if it's in Shapes or Symbols. Aha, it's in Shapes. I will select this heart right here. This will look good. And so I have that. I'm going to draw a heart on here. And I do want to change the fill to be transparent, and I will change the stroke to be, again, the color doesn't really matter. I'm just going to choose white to have it show up a little bit better. And for the width of the stroke, let's try 20 pixels. That's not too bad. Maybe 18 would look a little bit better. I kind of want it to be about the same width here as I do kind of the letters above, just to make it look a little better. And there is my heart right there. If I hold down my Alt key and I click and I drag this layer down, I make a duplicate of it, and then I can bring this one here. So now I got these two shapes, these two hearts, and I think those look okay like that. I might just select all of these to kind of center it a little bit more in there, just so the space between the bottom and the heart and the happy and the top is about even, you know. And then once I have that done, I will select these three layers and I'll group these, and I'll call this one content. Alright, now to make another layer here above those. This layer, I have to do a few things before I get too crazy with it. I need to change my foreground and background color here. So the foreground color, I'm going to go with F4 B644. This is kind of a palish type of gold color in here. And then the one behind it, I'm going to go AA7223. And this is going to be like a darker gold. So that's the first thing I need to do there. Then I'm actually just going to call this layer, I'm going to call it gold for right now. It's going to be a texture. And on this gold layer that I created, I can then go up here to filter and render and clouds. Gives me this kind of texture look in here. Doesn't look too bad. Then I can go up here to filter and noise and add noise. And for the noise in this, I want this to be 8% and Gaussian. I might actually go uniform. I'm going to go uniform, and then I'm going to go monochromatic for this. I think that'll work pretty good. And then what I want to do is I want to right click over here and I want to convert this to a smart object. Once that's done, then I can go up here to filter and filter gallery, and I have these options in here. The one I want to select is distort and glass. And over here, I can set the distortion all the way to the right, maximum of 20. Smoothness, you can kind of play around with that if you want. 3 doesn't look too bad. 2 doesn't look too bad either. It's kind of your call that you want to use for that. I'll stick with 2 for right now. It's something I can always go back in and change later. And then underneath that, I have frosted. And then for the scale of this, I'm going to up that to about 200. Let me see what smoothness looks like as 3 right now. 3 is a little bit too big, so I'll click 2. I'll stay with that. Go with the initial gut feeling. Okay, I'll click OK. And now we have this kind of gold foil looking surface right here. The reason why I had you convert this to a smart object first is because then I can always go back here and I can double click on that and I can adjust it here. Whereas if that was a rasterized layer, if I didn't like it, I would have to undo it. Then I'd have to go back up to filter, and it just is kind of time consuming. So smart objects are our friends especially when we're doing these filters, because then you create a smart filter on there and you can always adjust that and still have your non-destructed original layer there for it. So that looks pretty good. Then there's also a few other changes I might make to this, and because this is a smart object, I can always go back and make changes to these also. I'll go up here to adjustments, still with this gold layer selected on here, and one of them that I want to use is brightness contrast. So I'll click this, and if I change the contrast to about 50, it brings that up a little bit more, makes it look a little more metallic, a little more goldish, a little more vibrant on there, and you'll see it adds it up here to this little layer adjustment here. And then I also want to go back up here to adjustments, and one of these in here would be curves. I'm not the greatest at adjusting the curves, but there's a few things you can kind of try, and you can always undo it if you don't like it. You don't always need to adjust this one for it. But I'm going to take this bottom part of this line, and I'm going to bring it in just a real little bit to the right, and then up here towards the top. I'm going to click and drag this to the left just a hair, and that kind of further exaggerates this reflection kind of effect on this gold. It's starting to look pretty good. Then I can go up here to adjustments one last time, and there is the hue saturation button. When you mouse over these, like, it shows the text above it. That's how I know what these are. So if I select hue saturation, and I am just going to change the hue a little bit here, I'm going to bring this up to about 7, maybe 6, maybe 5. Let's try 5. I think that looks pretty good. So we got, yeah, I do think that looks pretty good. Like it'll show up a little bit more with that hue adjustment right there. Okay, so these things are all done. So what I want to do is I actually want to select these, and I am going to right click, and then I'm going to duplicate these, and then I'm going to put the duplicated group, or the duplicated ones, into a group, and I'm going to call this gold adjustments, and I'm going to make that layer be invisible, and that's just in case I need to go back and make any changes to that, because what I want to do now with these ones here, in order to make this work properly, to make the letters gold, I want to select these once again, and then I'm going to right click, and I want to go to convert to smart object. Once I do that, it like flattens all those, and I can no longer make those changes. So if later I'm like, oh, I don't like this and I want to change that, I still have my original files up here. I can just bring them out of my little folder up here, and then bring them down below, and still have those as a backup for an emergency. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to hold down the Alt button on my keyboard, and then I'm going to bring my cursor down here right between this gold layer, and I actually might even just rename this, and I'll call this one gold again, so it makes sense. Okay, and now if I hold down the Alt key on my keyboard, for real this time, and I move my cursor right between these two layers, my content and my gold, you see how that icon changes? If I hold down the Alt key to get that to show up, and then I left click with my mouse button, then it's going to only show this gold overlay over the top of where the content is, because all this content is in the same folder. It's going to put it over all of those. So that kind of works pretty good, to use that as a strategy for overlaying a pattern over to only certain elements of a design. All right, next thing that I want to do is go into this gold layer again. Or actually, no, I want to go into the contents layer. I'm going to double click. And it's going to bring up my layer style. And in here, we have these different styles that we can use for this. So I am actually going to go to the inner shadow. So here we go, inner shadow. And with the inner shadow, opacity, blend mode normal, opacity is fine. I do want the color to be black. I'm going to change this angle here to like 124, so it's kind of off to the side right there. The distance, 3 might be a little bit too big, so I'm going to switch it down to 2. That looks a little bit better. And then for the choke, I'm going to have it be 16. It's going to make that shadow be a little more visible there. And then for the size, I tell you what, I was originally going to go with 1 or 2. But then just by default when I came in here, what my previous setting was, 4 looks pretty good. So I'm just kind of playing with these values a little bit. And, you know, I might go 3. I think it might be a little bit too much. But then that looks pretty good. Everything else I think is fine for that layer style that is in there. So I can click OK here. And now everything is looking pretty good for this project. So I did want to check one more thing here. And I think that all looks good. So it's like a red cardboard, and then that inner shadow kind of looks like that it's cut out and it's overlain over the top of this gold foil to kind of give you that look that you're looking for this design. I think like I said, I think it would be good for Instagram or even Twitter, something like that. If you wanted to put like from your company's name, or you wanted to maybe incorporate your logo and use the same gold overlay with that, gives you some things to play around with, and perfect for just a little bit of some visual content to put out there on Valentine's Day. I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think of the tutorial in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next video.